Okay, so the recording has started. So let me present the screen. Okay. Okay, is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's start the class. As you can see that we were continuing with our um, layout of a typical power plant, and we were talking about the various circuits which are involved in a typical power plant. Okay, so let's just get back to the circuits again. It's the what were the circuits? If you recollect, it was the air and gas circuit. Okay, it was the cooling water circuit. It was the coal and ash circuit, and so on. Okay. Somebody is trying to enter. Okay. So can you? Is it visible? No. The screen is visible, no?
Yes, sir. Visible.
Okay. So what we have here. So the first circuits. Let us continue with the circuits that we're talking about. So it was the air and gas circuit, coal and ash circuit, cooling water circuit, and the other circuits as well. Okay. What were the other circuits? Obviously, it was the feed water and the steam flow circuit. So let us talk about those ones again and talk about them one by one. So if you remember, this was our air and gas circuit. So first of all, what we have our atmospheric air. Okay, from where the means what is entering, the air is entering. No, this becomes a problem. Please try to enter beforehand. Okay, it's become very difficult. Please enter beforehand. It becomes very difficult to go back and forth. Is it visible now? Air and gas circuit?
Yes.
Okay, so what we have here, the air and gas circuit, as you can see from this particular slide, that the air is drawn from the atmosphere through the forced draught fan. Okay, FD is the forced draught as it is written below. Okay, forced draught. Okay, FD is the forced draught. So air is drawn from the atmosphere through the forced draught fan and passes through the air preheater. So a part of this hot air passes through the coal mill and will be obviously be carrying the pulverized coal into the furnace through the coal burners, and the other part enters the furnace directly to support the combustion of coal. Okay, all this is happening here. Okay, and the resulting hot gases, which is known as the flue gas. Okay, it is passing through that flue gas is passing through the water tubes. That flue gas is actually hitting the water tubes in the boiler. Okay, then it will be hitting the superheater tubes, the reheater, then the economizer, and the preheater, and again the air preheater, and finally to the chimney. Okay, finally to the chimney. After passing through this electrostatic precipitator, which is nothing but the dust collecting device. Okay, as you can see, there is another the fan is installed just before the chimney, which is the induced draught fan, which we can easily understand that this induced draught fan, which is installed between this electrostatic precipitator, which is nothing but the dust collector, and the chimney. And what is the function of this ID fan? As you can see, that the function of this ID fan is to the function of this ID fan is to maintain, as you can see from this figure, a negative pressure within the furnace. Okay, so as you can understand that here the air that is entering here, it is in atmospheric pressure, but the pressure of air is increased by the use of this FD fan, and a negative pressure within this particular furnace is being, within the particular plant, is being maintained through the use of this ID fan, so that the flue gases which are being produced in the boiler actually passes through goes out after passing through this superheater, reheater, economizer, air preheater, ESP to the through the chimney to the atmosphere again. Okay, understood? This is the air and gas circuit. Now, how the questions will be coming in the semester. So you may be in the as the class progresses, we'll be talking about each of these superheater, reheater, economizer, air preheater, and the electrostatic precipitator individually. We're talking about the FD fan. We're talking about the ID fan individually. Okay. So what type of question may come in the semester? The question may come that you may be asked to define or to explain what is a air and gas circuit. Then what we have to do is that you have to go on explaining the air and gas circuit. Okay. Now the question comes that why we are saying that means this FD fan is passing, means this flue gas is passing through these surfaces, because what we are trying to do is that we are trying to extract as much heat as possible from the flue gas that is coming out from the boiler. Okay. Similarly, what we are doing is that what is the purpose of doing all these things? The purpose is nothing but to increase the efficiency of this particular arrangement. Okay. You'll be seeing later that how the efficiency depends upon what type of turbine we are using. Okay. How the efficiency of a typical power plant depends on what type of turbine we are using. So all these things will be culminating into increasing the efficiency of a typical thermal power plant. Okay. Now, what is superheater? What is reheater? I think you have. I suppose that you have all gone through your books and you have studied those ones. But again, we'll be teaching them in details in our class. Okay. So this was our air gas circuit. What was our second circuit? If you recollect, it was our coal and ash circuit. No, it was our coal and ash circuit. Okay. So again, what I have said here, that only is being written here only. Okay. So first is our atmospheric, then FD, then 3, 4. The sequence is given. Again, it should be written in the below of the slide. Okay. Here it is. Yes, it is written, the air and gas circuit. Okay. So next slide, what we said, it is the coal and ash circuit. So what is the coal and ash circuit? So first of all, what we have, as you can see in the left hand side of the slide is visible. First of all, tell me, the slide is visible. Slide 4.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because there was a problem in the Saturday. I was having a class. Then certain problem was occurring while changing the slide. It was not visible for few students. Okay. Let's get back to the class. So what we have here in this figure, as you can see in the left-hand side of your left-hand side, you have the coal and ash circuit, and the right-hand side, it is the cooling water circuit. Okay, it should be COO. Please forgive me for that spelling mistake. Okay. So first of all, let us talk about the coal and ash circuit. So again, what we have, we know that first of all, we have a coal storage area. So if you get a chance to visit any thermal power plant, you will be seeing that we have a coal storage area where the coal is actually kept. It may be a railway line may be coming and dumping the coal into certain places. And from there, what we have the CHP, or the coal handling plant. What does the function of the coal handling plant is? Because the high grade coal that will be used, that has to be pulverized. Okay. What it has to be done, it has to be pulverized. Pulverized means turning the coal into very fine dust. Okay. And that pulverized coal will be brought into the furnace through the use of this air. Through the use of the air that we're talking about. Okay. This air which we are seeing here, okay, this air will be bringing that pulverized coal into the furnace. Means some part of the air will be bringing that pulverized coal into this furnace, and some part of the air will be going into the furnace to burn the coal itself. Okay. So what it does is that pulverized coal will be entering this boiler and furnace. So obviously after giving away its energy, what will be left in terms of the coal? It will be only the ash. No. So that ash will be collected at the bottom of the boiler, and that ash will be removed from there by the method of our as handling plant, okay, AHP, okay, and it will be again stored in areas. So we can very well understand that the land requirement in a particular thermal power plant becomes very huge. Okay, there nowadays we use this as to make bricks also. Okay, and to fill up any land area. So the usage means the use of this as is not it is not thrown away nowadays, but rather used for other useful purposes, which will be again going in details when we're talking about this as handling plant later in the classes. Okay, in the right hand side, what we have the cooling water circuit. Now what is the cooling water circuit does, as you can as we have remembered from the previous layout that we have studied, and that what we had our first uh, we had our condenser, no, means the condenser means the exhaust steam that is coming out from the low pressure area of the turbine that is entering the condenser. Okay, so what is the condenser doing? As you can see that the condenser is using the cooling tower to cool that steam. Now what is a cooling tower? If you have visited any thermal power plant, if you live near a thermal power plant, you can see huge towers, no, huge towers from which smoke is coming out. Those are actually cooling towers. Okay, from what is done is that this exhaust steam is actually uh, is thrown from a certain height downwards, and due to each, what will happen before reaching the ground, what will happen, the heat of it will be dissipated, and that is coming out through in the form of smoke, if you have seen properly. Okay, and the water that is collected at the bottom of the cooling tower, that is again used to for our feed water. Okay, so that is being used through the circulating water pump, and that is again going, and that water which is being stored, or which is coming down at means which is stored at the cooling at the bottom of the cooling tower, that is again collected through the method of condenser. Okay, that is one method. Or if we have a river as shown in the figure here, it may be dumped, that water may be dumped into the downstream side of the river also. Okay, that is our cooling water circuit. Okay, so next so the next slide what we have here, as you can see, this is the circuit that you have to remember. Okay, so the next slide what we have the typical total circuit of the or total layout of a typical thermal power plant. As you can see here again, we have that feed water circuit. As you can see, feed water and steam circuit. Okay, so the feed water and steam circuit is a very important part of a typical thermal power plant, as you can see, because as you can see what is happening, that the condensate, okay, which is leaving the condenser, okay, the condensate which is leaving the condenser, okay, that is again first heated through these LP heaters, okay, through these LP heaters, and there we will be having when we're talking about this cooling water circuit in details, we'll be talking about apparatus which is known as our deaerator. Okay, what is the function of the deaerator? Is the function of the deaerator is to remove any corrosive oxygen which is dissolved into the water. Okay, and apart from that, the deaerator also maintains a negative pressure to extract any dissolved gas from the condensate. Okay, it maintains a negative pressure to extract any dissolved gas from the condensate. Then what does the condensate do? As you can see, that the condensate then passes through this LP heaters, and the temperature of that condensate, okay, and the temperature of the condensate is increasing. Okay, and then it is pumped into this boiler through the use of this boiler feed pump. Okay, and the circuit of the boiler feed pump is such that first that condensate or we can say the feed water, actually is going into the boiler after passing through the economizer, where again this temperature of the feed water is increased, and it is nearly as high as the temperature which is present inside the boiler. Okay, and in the boiler drum, what is happening? And the boiler drum and the boiler tubes, the water will be circulating due to the convection current. Okay, so now what about the steam? As you can see, there's a wet steam actually here passes through the separators in the boiler drum to separate water droplets from steam. Okay, and the steam is further heated up in this superheater before being supplied to the high pressure area of the turbine. So after expansion of that steam in this uh, high pressure zone of the turbine, the spent steam is taken to the reheater zone. Okay, where further more heat is applied to the steam at constant pressure. So after that, it is being passed to the LP turbine for our case. So there may be a three-stage turbine also. So in that case, there may be another turbine here, which is known as uh, our intermediate pressure turbine or our IP turbine. Okay. So from reheater, it may come into the IP and then it may come into the LP. Okay. So for our case, let us stick with our LP only. So from the reheater, it is going into the LP turbine blades to deliver further kinetic energy to the prime mover. And from there, it is exhausted to the condenser. So as you can see that this steam is again reutilized as our condensate. Okay. Now, as you can understand that this, as you can see from this particular circuit, that some part of the steam would be lost due to leakage and some other reasons. Okay, it would be lost due to leakage and some other reasons, which is made up by additional water from this water treatment plant. So how the water from the water treatment plant means from where the water for this water treatment plant comes, the water comes from the river, and the purpose or the function of this water treatment plant is to purify the raw water before feeding it into the feed water circuit. Okay. Now what one thing we can also say about this condenser, about the cooling water circuit in this way, is that the cooling water supply to the condenser is needed. As you can see that the cooling water supply to the condenser is needed to maintain a low back pressure by condensing all the steam that enters here. Okay, so to maintain that low back pressure, water may be taken from a natural source, as you can see here, such as a river, and the water from the condenser may be discharged into the river, as also shown here. Okay. Now, the flow of water through this condenser should be such that the hot water at the outlet, okay, the hot water at the outlet is not unsafe, is not the hot water at the outlet is not unsafe for the aquatic creatures in this river or lake, whichever may be used. Okay, so generally what happens, as you can see, as I was telling, that this heated water is cooled into a spray pond, or it is used through the method of this cooling tower and then recirculated back into the condenser. Okay, any questions till now? Any questions till now? Hello? Any
No,
questions?
sir. No, sir.
Okay. Okay. No questions. So I explained this one also. Okay. Feed water and steam circuit. Okay. And we also explained this one also. The cooling water circuit. As you can see, this is the cooling water circuit. Okay. Now tell me that why do you think this boiler makeup water is required? Why do you think this makeup water is required? কিছু answer কিন্তু আমি বলে দিয়েছি. I have told few answers that why we are using this makeup water. Anybody?
Some volume of water may be lost due to reheating and in those turbines.
Correct.
So we need
Means
to-
what is happening? Yes, that is one point. Second point is a very common. It is the leakage problem. Okay, there may be leakage problem. Okay, so because of that also some water may be lost. Okay, so number one, what we can say, I think we have a slide on this one. Only next slide should be there. Yes, here as you can see, the number one is that there is losses in the feed water due to continuous withdrawal of steam as well as continuous return of condensate to the boiler. Okay, this is losses in feed water due to continuous withdrawal of steam as well as continuous return of condensate to the boiler, losses due to blow down, and obviously we have second point is there may be leakages, and also that it is required to maintain the desired water level in the boiler steam drum. Okay, it is required to maintain a particular water level in the boiler steam drum, and for this purpose we require a continuous makeup water is added to the boiler system. Okay, a continuous makeup water is added to the boiler system. So here again that typical figure is given. As you can see, we have the boiler, from there the superheater and the reheater, means the steam that is being produced. So that steam is again running the turbine. From the turbine, the spent or the exhaust steam is going into the condenser. From the condenser, what we have our cooling tower or the spray pond. From the cooling tower spray pond, we have the condensate. What we have our circulating water pump that is bringing that water from the cooling tower back to the condenser, and that is now acting as our condensate or our feed water, and that is being passed through the feed water heaters to the method of this condensate extraction pump. And before this feed water heater, we have our that makeup water is also coming. Okay, I think this circuit is somewhat wrong in the sense that this makeup water should have come here. After that only the feed water would be heated. Okay, actually there are two circuits here. First one is a low pressure heater, then we have a high pressure heater. Okay, then we have, and within that low pressure heater and the high pressure heater, we have our boiler feed pump. From the boiler heat pump, we are going to the economizer and then into the boiler. Okay, understood? I think that the circuit is quite understandable. Okay, so before we go into the next slide, can you tell me that in this circuit, why it is required to heat the air and the feed water? As you can see that we are using the temperature of the flue gas to heat the feed water, and we are also using the temperature of the flue gas, that is the combustion gases that is being produced after burning coal. That is the flue gas. No, so why we are using the temperature of the flue gas to heat the feed water and the air that is going into the boiler?
Sir, feed water may contain, sir, suspended or soluble solid or gases.
No, feed water that we have taken care of. No, that we have
Sir,
taken
to
care of.
reduce the temperature difference between
To reduce the
incoming air.
temperature difference. Correct. That is the correct answer. Means please understand that the air and feed water, that means the water that is coming out from this river. Okay. Think about in this way, that the water is coming from here, that is in normal temperature, but the temperature of the boiler is very huge, which is around 200, 300 degrees centigrade. We are more than that we are talking about. So if a cold water enters the boiler, there may be thermal stresses inside the boiler. Okay. So to avoid the thermal stresses, we have to increase that temperature of the incoming air and the water. And that's why, and how we are doing that, we are doing that, we are increasing the temperature of the incoming air and feed water into the boiler by using the heat of the flue gas by through certain heat exchangers which are active, which is this economizer and air preheater are nothing but acting as heat exchangers. We can understand that. Understood? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
okay. And please remember that we are using feed water also. There's one point we always we have to remember that we'll be seeing later that will be that we are using actually we may use two types of boilers. That is one fire tube boiler and the water tube boiler. And the water tube boiler, we have always want to maintain the level of water in the drum or in the boiler drum. Otherwise, if the level of water decreases, then there's a chance that that there may be overheating of the boiler tubes, of the water tubes inside the boiler drum may occur, because of which there is a chance of any accident happening. Okay, so because of that also, we always try to maintain the water level in the boiler. Okay, now here we can see many pumps are there. Okay, FD fan, obviously we can understand that is a motor. ID fan, that is also a motor. Okay, we can understand that we have a condenser extraction pump, we have a circulating water pump, we have a boiler feed pump. And obviously, from when you're talking about cold storage CHP, there will be, we are in the coal handling plant, we talked about our pulverization of the coal. Means we need some motor to run some pulverization equipment so that the coal turns into dust. Okay, and we have the same thing in our ash storage and same thing in our ash handling plant also. Now, can you tell me that of all the motors that we are using, which motor is of the highest capacity and why? Please remember that most of the motors that we are talking about are all induction motors. Okay. Which motor is of the highest capacity and why? Why we are thinking so? Why you are telling that that motor is of very high capacity? Anybody? Hello?
So can you repeat the question?
I am repeating the question again. I'm asking that among the, as you can see that we are using many motors, no? We are using boiler feed pump, we are using condenser extraction pump, we are using circulating water pump, we are using FD fan, we are using ID fans. Okay. All these are utilizing certain motors. Okay. Which motor is of the highest capacity according to you and why it is so? Why it is so? Anybody? Okay, let me give you the answer. Just tell me, are you agreeing with me or not? Okay. The motor which is having the highest capacity is our boiler feed pump. Now, can you tell me that why it is having the highest capacity? The machine rating or the motor rating for a boiler feed pump runs into megawatts. Okay, it's not a kilowatt we are talking. We are talking about megawatts. Why? Why we are saying that the rating of the boiler feed pump is the highest?
Sir, because it has to handle liquid water and
Not liquid water. Just think about it. Just see the feed water circuit. I think you will be able to understand. After boiler feed pump, where this feed water is entering? It is
high
entering
pressure
the boiler,
heater.
high pressure boiler. Okay. It is entering
sir.
high pressure boiler. So we can very well imagine that if we have a high pressure inside the boiler and the outside air is outside temperature, means outside pressure is less, then what will happen?
It
The-
cannot enter.
Correct. Okay. Because
Yes,
of
sir.
because of that, the boiler feed pump rating should be of very high, because it has to enter the feed water into the boiler against the boiler means pressure
High
present
pressure.
inside the boiler. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It has to enter
Yes,
that
sir.
feed water against the high pressure of this boiler. Understood? This is the typical answer. This question will be we can ask you again in your grand viva, or your general viva was it, that will be happening in your fourth year first semester. I hope that you all remember this one. Okay, let me see. Okay, understood. So please remember these things, that these are very small things, but very important, that that whenever you'll be visiting any power plant, any thermal power plant, you will be seeing that the boiler feed pump rating is very, very high. Okay, it runs into megawatts. Okay, because it has to feed water into the boiler against the boiler pressure present inside the boiler. Okay, that is why the rating of the boiler feed pump is very high. Okay, now let us talk about the characteristics of a steam power plant. What is the characteristics of the steam power plant? The characteristics of the steam power plant, as you can see, that most of the losses is occurring by why the losses are occurring, because the heat is being rejected into the condenser. Okay, so please remember that this loss is unavoidable, and that's why the characteristics of, we can say, the characteristics of steam power plant is that it is having low efficiency. Okay, it is having lower cost in the sense that after we means initial running cost increases, but as means the initial startup cost is very high, but later on the cost may be becoming less. Okay. Third point, ability to burn coal, especially of high ash content and inferior coals. Yes, that the steam power plant should be able to burn coal which has very high ash content, and some low inferior coals also. It may be able to burn that coal so that more amount of energy from that particular coal can be extracted. Environmental impact in terms of air pollution, yeah, obviously we know that it's in terms of air pollution, the environmental impact should be as low as possible, and for that reason only we have used that ESPs. If you see the figures, this is the ESP, okay, or the electrostatic precipitator, which actually prevents all the soot particles. In the flue gas, what happens? Some unburnt coal and those dust particles will be there. Okay, and that the function of the ESP we'll be talking about it later. That, or the electrostatic precipitator, is that it will be capturing those soot particles or the unburnt coal particles, and only the flue gas divide of those particles will be entering our chimney. And the function and that is the function of the ESP actually. But there is a catch also. What is the catch? That that running an ESP requires huge amount of electricity. Okay, that running an ESP requires huge amount of electricity. That is also one of the disadvantage. Means there is one disadvantage of using an ESP also, but nothing can be done because we have to use ESP. Otherwise, the gas coming out from the chimney would be very harmful for the people living in the windward side. Means after for the people living just in the area or in the vicinity of the steam power plant. That's why the fourth point, has environmental impact in terms of air pollution, should be as low as possible. Okay. Fifth is our huge water requirement. As you can see that what we have to that the blade steam or the exhaust steam that is coming out from the LP turbine, that is going into the condensate, that is going into the condenser, and the condenser, what we have to do, we have to cool that one. Okay, and because of that, what is happening, that huge amount of losses of water is occurring in this particular steam power plant, and to make up for that we need a fresh supply of water. That's why a huge water requirement is a must for a steam power plant, and it should be higher reliability and availability. Availability means that that the power from a steam power plant should be available at all times, and it should be of high reliability. Means that whatever be the case, that that it should not be such that the power plant breaks down, or we are not receiving power from that power plant when it is needed the most. Okay, though there is a catch again here also, because as the class progresses, later on we'll be discussing that starting and stopping a steam power plant requires huge time. Means starting a steam power plant from cold start means একদম প্রথম থেকে যদি আমরা স্টার্ট করতে যাই একটা বয়লারকে বার্ন করতে বা একটা স্টিম পাওয়ার প্ল্যান্ট যদি পাওয়ার প্রডিউস করতে চাই, it will take around minimum 48 to 72 hours. Means that is around 2 days to 3 days. Okay, so what happens is that these steam power plants are required only to supply our base load. Now when we're talking later, we're talking about a curve which is known as a load curve. We'll be seeing that this steam power plant is supplying only the base load, and the peak load means the time when the power requirement or the time during the day when the power requirement increases, that portion is supplied by other power plants, which can actually quickly change their fuel requirement to meet the power demand. And for that case, we'll be talking about our hydel power plants specifically, and we'll be also talking about our pump storage power plant. Okay, in West Bengal we have a pump storage power plant. Can anybody tell me? In West Bengal we have a pumped storage power plant. Can anybody tell me? Pump storage power plant, where it is located in West Bengal? Many of you may have visited the place also. Anybody?
Sir,
Okay. Farakka is not a pump storage power plant. It is our NTPC. It is NTPC, a steam power plant only. Okay, it is supplying power to the grid. Okay. I think many of you have visited Ayodhya Dam in Purulia. Okay, that is a pump storage power plant. Now, how does a pump storage power plant works? We'll be talking about it. Okay, I can give you a just brief idea here. So water will be stored in levels. Okay, there will be first layer, second layer, and the third layer. So from the first layer, the water will be passed to the bottom third layer through our hydel power plants. Okay, so what it will do is that through our hydel power plants, the water will be flowing, and obviously after the through the hydro turbines, the water will be flowing, and through the hydro turbines will be rotating, and through the generators the power will be produced. Okay, and through the generators power will be produced. Now then how the water will be then going up? Then the water will be pumped up into the turbine again, or into the upper dam again, when the load requirement in the grid will be less. So যখন লোড রিকোয়ারমেন্ট বেশি হয়ে যাচ্ছে তখন কি করছি, তখন আমরা ওই আপার ড্যাম থেকে লোয়ার ড্যামে আমরা জল পাঠাচ্ছি through the hydro turbines. So electricity is being generated because the turbine is rotating the generators, and from the generators we are getting the power. And যখন পাওয়ার রিকোয়ারমেন্ট কমে যাচ্ছে গ্রিডে, তখন কি হচ্ছে, তখন আমি গ্রিড থেকে পাওয়ার নিয়ে আমি কি করছি, সেই যে লোয়ার ড্যামে যে জলটা আছে, that lower dam means the water in the lower dam is pumped back to the upper dam. Okay, so this is the pump storage power plant. Okay, so you may ask, sir, why? Because the cost will be requirement, there will be cost requirement when we are drawing electricity from the grid. Yes, there will be cost requirement. হ্যাঁ বলো।
পাম্প স্টোরেজ পাওয়ার প্ল্যান্টটা কি তাহলে পিক লোড হিসেবে ব্যবহার করা হয়? মানে বেস লোড, পিক লোড,
পিক লোড যখন তোমার রিকোয়ারমেন্ট তখনই হবে। ওকে, যখন তোমার রিকোয়ারমেন্ট কমে যাবে, when the load requirement in the grid is decreased, then কি হবে, তখন আমি গ্রিড থেকে পাওয়ার নিয়ে সেই জলটাকে আবার আমি আমার আপার ডেকে বা আপার ড্যামে আমি ওটাকে আবার ট্রান্সফার করব। ওকে, so the Ayodhya dam that has been built, this is nothing but a pump storage power plant. Okay, understood? Okay, we'll be talking about it in details in our later classes. Okay, So this was the characteristics of the steam power plant. So what is the criteria then of selecting the site for a thermal power plant? So criteria of selecting a thermal power plant. Number one method, number one টা তো obviously আমাদের কাছে খুব common, আমরা এটা নিয়ে খুব সারাদিনে দেখছি. First is the land requirement. Okay, as you can understand that we require a coal handling, we require a coal storage, we require an ash storage. So it will require a huge area. So the cost of land should be reasonable and further extensions should be possible. Further extension should be possible মানে সাপোজ আমি একটা নতুন ইউনিট তৈরি করতে চাইছি। ওকে, সাপোজ আমার টোটাল জেনারেটিং ক্যাপাসিটি ছিল 1000 মেগাওয়াট, আমি ওটাকে 1200 মেগাওয়াট করতে চাইছি। তার মানে আমি আরো একটা 200 মেগাওয়াট ইউনিট আমি তৈরি করতে চাইছি। We want to increase from 1000 megawatt to 1200 megawatt, and for that reason we want to construct a 200 megawatt. Why we are doing so? Obviously because suppose it is supplying to an area and the power requirement in that area has increased, then for that reason we would requiring another unit, and for that reason what will happen, that obviously the further extension should be possible, and keeping that in mind, the land of the thermal power plant should be selected. So cost of land should be reasonable and further extension should be possible. Next in line, if you think about that layout, that it has to be near a water body. Okay, it has to be near a water body because huge water was required. Okay, so second point is that abundant quantity of cooling water for the condenser should be available. Abundant quantity of cooling water for the condenser should be available. So the means it should be, if possible, it should be near a natural water source, or means stored water area should be available, because this abundant quantity of cooling water is required for the condenser. Okay. Third is that obviously the facilities should be there for the transportation of fuel. Facilities should exist for the transporter of fuel, so that all the that railway lines and all the roads should be easily accessible to towards this thermal power plant site. Okay, so facilities should exist for the transport of fuel, and we all know that if the thermal power plant is near a load center, so if the station is located near the center of distribution, then the distribution costs will be very low. Okay, the distribution costs will be very low. What is the distribution costs? We'll be talking about, we'll be doing a design in your third year second semester classes, which is known as a power system design. We'll be designing a typical town. We will be designing the distribution system of a typical town. Okay. So we'll be seeing that the distribution cost is basically the cost of the wires. Okay, the cost of the wires means cost of the distributors from the substation to our local transformers. The cost of the transformers, actually the cost of the transformers only takes up huge, it runs into lakhs. Okay, so depending on the rating of the transformer, the cost would be, the cost of that means the distribution cost will be increasing. Okay, so the fourth point, it can be said that if the station is located near the center of distribution, the distribution costs are low. Again, there is a catch here. What is the catch? That catch is the fifth point. As you can see, what is the problem? That starts should always be away from populated area. So though the cost of distribution may decrease if the station is near the center of distribution, but what happens, that the site should always be away from populated areas, otherwise there will be pollution hazards. Because what happens is that from that chimney, the smoke that is coming out, it is containing of SOx, that is sulfur oxides and nitrous oxides, SOx, NOx, and because of this quantity of SOx and NOx, many pollution hazards can occur. Means if you are living in any industrial belt, then it's very common that we're seeing that some coal or shoot is being formed on tops of houses, on the terraces, and so on. Okay, so there's the pollution hazard we are talking about. Okay, understood till now? Hello.
Yes, sir, understood.
Okay. Next is basically we're talking about the heat losses. Okay, we were talking about the heat losses. So there is huge amount of heat losses which are occurring in thermal power plant. As you can see, the approximate figures. We have our boiler house losses. Okay, we have our dry flue gas. Okay, in the boiler house losses, what are the losses? As you can see, we have our dry flue gases. Okay, we have our moisture in gas. We have a ash and unburnt carbon, radiation and leakage, and stray losses. So all these losses which are occurring in a boiler house constitute around 16% of the overall losses. Okay, it constitutes around 16% of the overall losses. Then we have the turbine and generator losses. So as you can see that the heat rejected to the condenser is maximum at around 54%, whereas losses in the alternator is very less because it is around 1%. Please remember that as you can see that the most of the losses that is occurring in this thermal power plant are occurring at the condenser. Okay, most of the losses are occurring at the condenser, and please remember that this loss is unavoidable. Okay, this loss is unavoidable and cannot be converted into our mechanical form. Okay, and the thermal efficiency of this particular turbine and the power plant actually depends upon the temperature and pressure of the steam at the inlet of the turbine and the back pressure of the condenser. Okay, the thermal efficiency of the turbine and the power plant mainly depends upon the temperature and pressure of the steam at the inlet of the turbine, that is the HP turbine. Okay, at the inlet of the turbine and the back pressure of the condenser. So as you can understand that the efficiency would be increasing with increase in operating temperature and pressure and the reduction of the back pressure at the condenser. Okay, so I think that is written here somewhere. Yes, here it is written. Okay, so the as you can see the efficiency increases with increase in operating pressure and temperature and the reduction of the back pressure at the condenser. So reduction of back pressure means which is about as you can see 0.04 kg per millimeter square. Okay, so what is the efficiency now then? So efficiency is in the range of, as you can see, in the range of 29% to 46%, and the thermal efficiency of a conventional thermal power station is around 30 to 48%. So when we are talking about overall efficiency, it is nothing but the as you know that no heat engines by the law of thermodynamics can be more efficient than the ideal heat engine operating on Carnot cycle. So the efficiency overall is around efficiency of the thermal efficiency into the efficiency of the generator. Both together will be stating around 29 to 46%. Okay, so the rest of the energy will be leaving in the form for heat, and this waste heat can be disposed of with cooling water or in cooling towers, as we saw in our cooling water circuit. And if the waste heat is reused, okay, is instead utilized, it is called cogeneration. Okay, it is called cogeneration. Okay, so how this efficiency can be improved? So obviously the design of the boiler, turbine, and the generator have to be improved. Okay, so the modern trend, as you can see, it is used to use high pressure and high temperature steam at the turbine input. So increase the operating temperature has more influence on efficiency than pressure. So the modern trend is to use high pressure and high temperature steam at the turbine input. The modern high pressure turbines are actually known as our Benson boilers. Okay, we were talking about the boilers next. So the boilers we'll be talking about first of all the general boilers, that is what is a fire tube boiler and a water tube boiler, and merits. We'll be talking about the merits of a fire tube boiler, the merits of a water tube boiler over a fire tube boiler. And we're talking about our high pressure boilers, which are known as our Benson boilers. Okay, because as you know that whatever means the boilers that we're using nowadays are all supercritical boilers. Okay, they are using supercritical temperature and pressures. Okay, so Next slide. Let's go back to the next slide. Okay, before we go into the next slide, I want to tell another one thing that Miss, I want to accustom you with another term which is known as our captive power plant. Okay, there's another. We talked about thermal power plant. We talked about cogeneration power plant here only. So the waste heat which is being utilized for other purpose. Okay, it may be used for other things. Actually, means heating water and so on. Means so it may be so that power plant is known as a cogeneration. In this line only, there is another power plant which is known as our captive power plants. Now, as you can understand from the name, what it that it is that power plant is has been made to supply the power need of a typical industry. Okay, so that's why that name is known as our captive power plant. Suppose I can give example like DSP. I hope that everybody has heard the term of DSP. That is our Durgapur steel plant. Okay, so Durgapur steel plant, the power means the power plant inside the Durgapur steel plant is a captive power plant, because the generation that occurs, that is used to power the steel industry. Okay, as well as to power all the neighboring areas. So that's why that's an example of a captive power plant. Okay, just remember the term. That is not written anywhere. Just remember the term. Okay, so now we're talking about the boiler. So what is the main parts of a steam power plant? So first of all, when we're talking about the main part of a steam power plant, the first of all which comes into our mind is our boiler. So what is a boiler? A boiler is a closed vessel in which water is converted into steam by the application of the heat. Okay, yes, you know that the boiler is a closed vessel in which water is converted into steam by the application of the heat. Now, obviously, we have what we know that the boiler has to produce steam at very high purity, pressure, and temperature. Okay, so boiler has to produce steam at high purity, pressure, and temperature, which is required for the steam turbine that is actually driving the electrical generator. Okay, so the prime mover is, as you can remember that if you recollect. Okay, so this is the boiler. From here it is the steam is actually flowing through the superheater, and then it is expanding inside this turbine, and because of it this kinetic energy is being imparted to this turbine, and the turbine is also rotating. Okay, so the typical boiler pressure, as you can see, is in the range of 80 to 160 bar. You can very well understand that a huge amount of pressure is required, and the steam temperature is of the order of 540 degrees centigrade, and the superheater steam temperature ranges from 600 to 900 degrees centigrade. So you can very well imagine that the huge pressure and temperature requirement is required inside a typical boiler. So what should be the essential features of the boiler? Number one should be the safety. Okay, so the essential features is that number one should be the safety. That is, the boiler should be safe under all operating conditions. Okay, next is accessibility. That is, the various parts of the boiler should be accessible for repair and maintenance. Okay, third is capacity. So the boiler should be capable of supplying steam according to the requirements. Okay, and fourth point is it should be efficient. This to permit means the efficiency of the boiler should be high. So to permit efficient operation, the boiler should be able to absorb a maximum amount of heat produced due to burning of fuel in the furnace. So in our case, since we're talking about thermal power plant, so the fuel in our case is our coal. Okay, and the boiler should be capable of quick starting and loading. But as we previously, as I have told you, that it will be requiring around depending upon the type of boilers, it will be requiring around 48 to 72 hours to start a typical thermal power plant to extract power from a typical thermal power plant. Okay, so how does the performance of a boiler may be measured? The performance of a boiler is measured in terms of its evaporative capacity. Okay, in terms of this evaporative capacity, also called the power of a boiler. Okay, the performance of a boiler may be measured in terms of its evaporative capacity, also called the power of a boiler. So as you can see, how it is defined. It is defined as the amount of water evaporated or steam produced in kg per hour. So it is expressed in kg, means in kg per kg of fuel burnt or kg per hour per meter square of heating surface. Okay. So how many types of boiler is there? So I was talking about you. There are two types of boilers generally. Okay. So according to the flow of water and hot gases, there are two types of boilers. So number one is our fire tube boiler, and the second one is our water tube boiler. So as you can see, what is our fire tube boilers? Okay. So the hot products of combustion, as you can see, the hot products of combustion is passing through the tubes which are surrounded by water. Okay. So the hot products of combustion is passing through the tubes which are surrounded by water. That is our fire tube boiler. What is our water tube boiler? Just the opposite. That is water circulating through the tube and hot products of combustion flow over these tubes. Okay. And hot products of combustion is flowing over these tubes. Okay. Understood? Hello, any
Yes, sir.
questions till now? Hello?
No question, sir.
No questions. Okay. So what we have, so let us talk about these boilers one by one. Okay. So number one, as you can see, it is the fire tube boilers. Okay. So what are the features of a typical fire tube boiler? Okay. Okay, what are the features of a typical fire tube boiler? Let us talk about this one first. So here the features of the fire tube boiler. It is very compact and requires minimum floor area. Okay, any type of fuel can be used with this boiler, and it is well suited for small capacity requirements. Okay, it is well suited for small capacity requirements. Okay. So I think we have a figure of a fire tube boiler. Yes, here we have a figure of a fire tube boiler. As you can see, what we have a steam outlet, we have a hot gas outlet, we have the fire tubes, and we have the hot gases. So what was here, what was the fire tube boiler? So as you can see that the hot products of combustion is passing through the tubes, and it is surrounded, and those tubes are surrounded by water. Okay, hot products of combustion is passing through these tubes, and these tubes are surrounded by water. Okay. So what is the advantages of a fire tube boiler? So as you can see here, means okay. So please remember that in the fire tube boilers there are various types of boilers. It may be a Cochrane boiler, it may be Lancashire boiler, it may be locomotive boiler. Okay. There are various types of fire tube boilers. It may be a Cochrane boiler, it may be a Lancashire boiler, it may be a locomotive boiler. But the general boilers that we actually see is all our Cochrane boilers. Okay. So now let us talk about that. What are the advantages and disadvantages of using a fire tube boiler? Okay. So the advantages of a fire tube boiler is number one, it is cheap than the water tube boiler. Okay, it is cheaper than the water tube boiler, and fluctuations of the steam demand can be met easily. And as you can see that it is very compact in size. Okay, it is very compact in size because it requires minimum floor area, and it is very compact in size compared to our water tube boilers. But what are the disadvantage of a fire tube boiler? Okay, so the disadvantage of a fire tube boiler is number one is that the required steam pressure rising time is quite high due to the large quantity of water. Okay, so the required steam pressure rising time is quite large due to the large quantity of water, because here what is happening that the hot gases are inside the tubes and water is surrounding those tubes. So output of steam pressure cannot be very high since the water and the steam are kept in the same vessel. Okay, so this water, as you can see that the water and the steam is kept in the same vessel, so the output steam pressure cannot be very high. Okay, so as we know that the steam that is actually being received fire tube boiler is also not very dry. Okay, the steam that is coming from the fire tube boiler is also not very dry. Okay, and in a fire tube boiler, the steam drum is always under pressure, and the hot combustion of gases are restricted within the tubes. So there may be a chance of huge explosion, which may result to severe accidents. Okay, so the last point, I think you can very well understand that if the pressure is very high because the whole arrangement is under very high pressure, and in that case, what we have in that case, what we have, this hot combustion of gases is within the tubes, and it is surrounded by water. So there may be chance of a huge expansion. Okay, because of uneven heating within that tubes. Okay, because of uneven heating within the tubes, there may be a chance of huge explosion. Obviously, that will lead to a very severe accident. Okay, that is the disadvantage of using a fire tube boiler. Now let us talk about a water tube boiler. Okay, up to here, any questions? Up to here, any questions?
No question, sir.
Okay. Next, what we are talking about water tube boilers. Okay. Water tube boilers. Yes, here it is the water tube boilers. As you can see that the level of water in the water tube is the same. And what we have here that the heat transfer is taking place to the walls of the tubes. There's a drums are protected from direct contact with hot flue gases. Okay. So the heat transfer is taking place to the walls of the tubes, and the drums are protected from direct contact with hot flue gases. Okay, so available means these water tube boilers are available in many designs. So it may be a horizontal, straight, or bent tubes. So as you can see here, we have a horizontal, straight, or bent tube. It may be a longitudinal or cross drum. It may be horizontal, vertical, or inclined tubes. Forced circulation or natural circulation, it may be a single or multi-drum. Okay. So circulation of water within the tubes is one of the most important design consideration. Okay. The circulation of water within the tubes is one of the most important design consideration. And as you can see here, just go through this figure for a few seconds, you will be able to understand that how the water tube boiler is actually working. So this is a Babcock-Wilcox boiler. Okay, it is a Babcock-Wilcox boiler, very common boiler. Okay, so the what is the features of this is that the evaporative capacity of this boiler is very high compared with other boilers. Okay, and as you can see from this from the figure, that the defective tubes can be very easily replaced. Okay, the defective tubes can be very easily replaced. Okay, and what we have that the whole boiler is actually resting on a typical iron structure. Okay, the whole or the entire boiler is resting over an iron structure, so independent of any brickwork. So the boiler may expand or contract freely. Okay, so the boiler may expand or contract freely, and the brick walls which from the surroundings of the boilers are only to enclose the furnace and the hot gases. Okay, the brick walls which is present is only there to means the brick walls which form the surroundings of the boiler are only there to encase the furnace and the hot gases. I think all this written here also. Yes, here it is written. Okay. So this is the water tube boiler, and here what I have just told, that is all written here. Okay. So what are the advantages of water tube boilers? Number one is that high pressure of the order of at around 140 by kg centimeters per centimeter square can be obtained. Okay. Heating surface is large. So heating surface is large. So what can happen that the steam can be generated easily. So large heating surface can be obtained by using a large number of tubes. Okay. So if we increase the number of tubes, then the heating surface will also be increased. And because of the high movement of water in the tubes, the rate of heat transfer becomes large, resulting into a greater efficiency. Okay. Because of high movement of water in the tubes, the rate of heat transfer becomes large, resulting into a greater efficiency. Okay. So what is I think by now you can understand that there are some advantages of using this water tube boiler over the fire tube boilers. So let us talk about the merits of water tube boilers over the fire tube boilers. So number one, as you can see, that the water tube boiler can quickly meet the change in the steam demand. Okay, it should be STAM. Please forgive me for the spelling mistake. Okay, so it can easily meet the quick change in steam demand. Okay, so reaching the desired steaming temperature within short time is also possible. Why? Because here, as you can see, that a large heating surface can be easily generated. Okay, so since the heating surface is large and we also have very high pressure, so that change in the steam demand can be made very easily, and that steaming temperature, because of the large heating surface, can be reached within very short time. Its evaporative capacity is considerably larger than the steam pressure range, and the steam pressure range is also high. Yes, we have just talked about that in the features of the water tube boilers. Heating surfaces are more effective as hot gases travel at right angles to the direction of water flow. Yes, as you can see here, the hot gases are traveling at right angles to the direction of the water flow, as you can see from the figure here. Okay, that the hot gases are traveling at right angles to the direction of the water flow, because of which the heating surfaces are more effective. Okay, so fourth point, that the combustion efficiency is higher because complete combustion of fuel is possible as the combustion space is much larger. Yes, as you can see from the figure, that as the combustion space is much larger, the combustion efficiency will also be increasing because complete combustion of fuel will be possible. Fifth point is that the thermal stresses in the boilers are less as different parts of the boiler remain at uniform temperature due to quick circulation of water. As you can see from the figure, that because of quick circulation of water, what is happening, that the thermal stresses in the boiler parts are less as different parts of the boiler remain at uniform temperature due to quick circulation of water. So as you can see that this boiler can be easily erected and then transported in different parts, as different parts can be separated very easily. Okay, so boiler can be easily transported and erected as the different parts can be easily separated. Seventh point is the damage due to bursting of water tubes is less serious. Therefore, water tube boilers are also sometimes called as safety boilers. Okay, so damage due to bursting of water tubes is less serious compared to the bursting of pipes of hot gases. That's why these water tube boilers are also sometimes called as our safety boilers. Eighth point, as you can see, that all the water tube boilers, okay, are easily accessible for cleaning, inspecting, and our repairing. Okay, it is easily available for cleaning, inspecting, and our repairing. Okay, so all the parts of the water tube boilers are easily accessible for cleaning, inspecting, and repairing. I think you can understand that one. Okay, and the water tube boilers furnace area can be easily altered to meet the field requirements. Yes, because as you can see that the heating surface can be altered, so the furnace area definitely can be altered, and if the furnace area can be altered, then it can easily meet the fuel requirements. Okay, so can you tell me now? Obviously, it is written in the slide in the next slide, but can you tell me what should be the demerits of a water tube boiler? What are the demerits of a water tube boiler? We can just tell the answers if we think about what we had talked about in the last classes only. We talked about feed water and so on. Okay. From that idea only, you can tell what are the demerits of water tube boiler. What are the demerits? I was stressing one point. If you recollect, yes.
Water leakage can be happened.
Water leakage. Okay, that's the common point. Okay, water leakage may happen. That's the common point. But water leakage within the boiler, we try to avoid it. Okay, because what will happen if water leakage happens? Then what will happen? Then the bursting water tube there's a high chance of water tubes bursting. No, so leakage within the boiler we are avoiding. Okay, within the boiler
Sir.
is we can avoiding, totally avoiding it. Yes,
Heat
yes,
produced by water tube boiler will be less than fire tube boiler.
No, that's also not the case. We have stated no, that the evaporative capacity of this boiler is high. I think I talked about it in the features, no? Yes. So if the evaporative capacity is high, so how the heat produced will be less? Heat produced is much more compared to our fire tube boilers. What is the disadvantage of the water tube boiler? If you recollect, I was talking about one thing, no, that the water level in the water tube boiler should not be going down. Correct? I was stressing one thing, no, when we talked about why boiler feed water is required. I talked about that we always require that the water level in the boiler should be always kept at a constant. So if there is a failure in the feed water supply, then what will happen? If there is a failure in the feed water supply, even for a very short period, then the boiler may become overheated. Okay, then the boiler will become overheated. So if the boiler becomes overheated, then the chances of any accident happening increases. Number one. Number two, see, the water is actually circulating. Correct? We talked out that since the water is circulating, so what is happening? Because of the circulating water, that there is no thermal stresses in the boiler parts are occurring. Okay, because of quick circulation of water. Now, if the water contains any impurity, then what will happen? Then scales may be formed inside those water tubes. Correct? If this water that is shown in the figure, if this water is having some impurity or some sedimentary, then what will happen? Scales will be formed inside the tubes. Scales will be formed means it will cause overheating, means it may cause bursting of the tubes. So the water should be pure feed water. Okay, the water entering the water tube should be pure feed water. Okay, and obviously we have to, and these water tubes require more careful attention compared to our previous fire tube boilers. That's why the maintenance costs of this fire tube boiler means of this water tube boiler is much high compared to our fire tube boilers. Okay, since careful attention is required for this water tube boilers, hence the maintenance cost of this water tube boilers is much high compared to our fire tube boilers. Understood these 3 points? Understood these 3 points? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now from these 3 points only you can understand that why we need a water treatment plant. I think you can understand why we need a water treatment plant. Hello? Yes, can you hear me? Just reply. I'm not able to understand that you all are here or not. Okay. So the water treatment, what is the function of the water treatment plant then? We'll be talking about it later, but still we can just guess that the water treatment plant makes impure water into pure feed water, which is free of any impurities and of any sedimentaries. Okay. Because if that is present, then that may form scales inside these water tube boilers, because of which overheating of the water tubes may take place, because of which bursting of the tubes may occur. And please remember, we do not want any leakage inside the water tube boilers. Okay, because any leakage inside the water tube boilers will lead to overheating of that area, will lead to the which may lead to a severe accident like the bursting of the tubes. Okay, so please remember these 3 points. So these are the demerits of water tube boiler over fire tube boiler. Okay. Now we are talking about our high pressure boilers. We are talking about high pressure boilers. Okay. So in all modern power plants, we use high pressure boilers at around greater than 100 bars. Okay, you can very well imagine the means the high pressure that we are usually using. So in order to obtain efficient operation and high capacity, forced circulation of water through boiler tubes is found helpful. Okay, forced circulation of water through boiler tubes is found helpful, and that forced circulation of water is done through the use of our forced circulation of water through the boiler tubes is found helpful, and that forced circulation of water through the boiler tubes is done through our which pump?
Feed water pump.
Boiler
feed
feed pump. Okay, boiler feed pump. Okay, we are using the boiler feed pump for that one. Okay, so what are the advantages of using this high pressure boiler? First one is that the efficiency and capacity of the plant can be increased as reduced quantity of steam is required for the same power generation if high pressure is used. So if the high pressure steam is used, so the efficiency and capacity of the plant can be increased as reduced quantity of steam is required. So obviously if the pressure increases, the volume of the steam requirement will be decreased for the same power generation. Second, forced circulation of water through these boiler tubes provides freedom in the arrangement of the furnace and the water walls, in addition to the reduction in the heat exchange area. Okay, it provides freedom in the arrangement of the furnace and the water walls. So what happens is that the capacity of the plant can be increased. Okay, if we can rearrange the furnace and the water walls, in addition to the reduction in the heat exchange area. Okay. Third is tendency of scale formation is reduced due to the high velocity of water. Okay, tendency of scale formation is reduced. You can very well imagine that if we are using a high pressure forced circulation, then no scale formation will be present. No scale will be formed inside those water tubes. Okay. Fourth point. So the danger of overheating is reduced. The danger of overheating is reduced as all the parts are uniformly heated. Okay, as you can very well understand that obviously that since because of the forced circulation, the water circulation is better, and because of which since the water circulation is better, so all the portions of the boiler will be uniformly heated, and so the danger of overheating would be reduced. And fifth point, the differential expansion is reduced due to uniform temperature, and this reduces the possibility of gas and air leakages. Okay, and this reduces the possibility of gas and air leakages. Okay, so as this is also understandable that if we are using high pressure, okay, high pressure, then what will be and we are also using forced circulation, because of which there will be uniform temperature throughout the boiler. If there is a uniform temperature, then the differential expansion will be reducing, and if the differential expansion is reducing, then the possibility of the gas and the air leakages will also be reducing. Okay. So next in line is our boiler mountings. Okay. Next in line is our boiler mounting. So what are the boiler mountings? So boiler mountings are used for the safety of the boiler and for complete control of the steam generation process. Okay. And for complete control of the steam generation process. So obviously there will be safety valves, water level indicators, feed water regulator, chute blower, automatic alarm, pressure gauge, and likewise many other valves, safety valves will be also be there. So, okay, so those are all our boiler mountings. And apart from that, we have our boiler accessories which are used to increase the efficiency of the boiler. And in the next class, we will be talking about these accessories. That is, our economizer, air preheater, superheaters, reheaters are all coming into the as part of our boiler accessories. Okay. So with this, we finish our today's class. Many slides are still left, though I'll be providing the slides. In the next class, we'll be continuing with those slides. Okay. So any questions till now? Hello. Any questions till now?
No
No,
question.
sir.
Okay, so I'm stopping the presentation and I'm stopping the recording also. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And we'll be having our next class on Thursday. Okay. On 4th in the morning from 10 only. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Please leave the class.